Hello, welcome to some Derps Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about some new pitches that Buddy has for his home game and some genre stuff there. Before we do that, Buddy, why don't you tell the folks at home what we do on this podcast?
On this podcast, we like to talk about games. The reason that we're going over some of this stuff is we're starting the next, so it's about 2 months until we start the next arc of the D&D game that we started on Monday. That was Heretic Heroes. But like each of these arcs have their own sort of name, and this is like the greater, I don't even know what you would call this, like the greater sort of Ceran sort of campaign stuff. And in preparation for that, I was writing new pitches, because in my mind, I want to provide new opportunities for sort of stuff to happen. I actually don't really know how I want to handle this. This was something that Rachel and I were kind of talking about yesterday. Part of the selling point for Ceran in this game and doing a fully, no adventure path, somebody is making it all sort of up, is that you don't have to kind of, chicken out on big world-shaping events, right? Heretic Heroes being a great example of this. There was a thing that was happening for thousands of years that nobody knew, this great secret that this set of player characters was like able to uncover, and it has kind of massive consequences for sort of like the world as it goes forward. And theoretically speaking, I think all of the arcs should sort of have, not necessarily should go that way, but should have that potential to them, right? And at what point do these things just sort of start happening in the background because like they're interesting and I kind of want the world to evolve? Like the hypothetical that I said is the next arc in the Heretic Heroes is Liberation of the Heathlands. It's where you pick up with the story of have I explained Liberation of the Heathlands to you yet? Do you know what it is?
You've you gave us the vague pitch at the end of Heretic Heroes, which is, now I'm going to be embarrassed because I can't remember anybody's name. Big Lion Boy, the first prophet.
Terej, Lion Jesus. Okay,
goes to Lion Scotland to reinvigorate,
Did I tell you it was Lion Scotland?
I don't know if you said it was Lion Scotland or just you called it the Highlands, and I was like, oh, Scotland. So
it is specifically the Heathlands, which is it is Lion Scotland. That is the basis for sort of all of this. This is all like I don't know. There's like real history that I'm kind of drawing from a little bit, in terms of like Scottish rebellions against like the British Crown and stuff like that. But I like the idea that, Terej goes back to kind of like his homeland, and that's where he rallies his support in order to begin his new crusade, because he's a prophet, he can call a crusade, and he's going to call a crusade in order to sort of bring truth and justice back to the Leonin hierarchy. But I was like, if you guys do 10 more campaigns, let's say you do 10 more arcs, and you don't touch Liberation in the Heathlands, does that kind of just resolve in the background? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it something that I want to leave it open so that just when you get there, even if it is 10 years from now, it's there to be continued? Or is it the kind of thing where if enough time passes, we just sort of say, well, Liberation in the Heathlands happened, and the next pitch that is a part of that sort of train opens up? I don't know how I want to handle that, but it is just like a weird and interesting question, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like the answer there is, that's a conversation for you to have with your players, right? Like,
yeah, that's fair.
Like, I feel like, if we don't touch, I don't know, just to pick another one because it's one I can think of, Ripple in the Sand, right, for 5 years, and we don't seem to care about it, or like Rats in the Walls, maybe advance that one. But if like, enough of us are like, no, I would really like to play Heathlands, and I'm just waiting until I can like, convince enough people to vote for it, maybe you halt it, right? Like, also, it's your world, how much the meta story needs to progress in order to get there, right? Like, we're not handling it explicitly as meta story, right? Like, if there's a version of things where you could run a long-term campaign that's something like, when you complete 3 of these 5 storylines, you unlock tier 2 of the storylines with the expectation that eventually you hit like kind of like the end state for the long-running campaign. But that's, that's slightly different, I think. That seems slightly different than what you're running here.
Yeah, it is definitely less that than, I don't even know. Well, it's definitely less that, I guess. Yeah. I would say. But anyway, so I was writing these pitches. I ended up doing 10 of them. Part of it is that I wanted to provide more opportunities for space in the world for people to kind of explore. Basically, my first premise was I need to have at least 2 pitches in every single one of the imperial provinces. That is like hitting some extra thing, right? So originally I had, I can't even remember. It's like Fangs of Our Fathers, I think, is the one where it's set in Silver Plain with all of the high elves, and it's about nobility, but there's a beastman warherd that busts out of the forest and is like wreaking havoc throughout these like high elf lands. You got to respond to this kind of like military threat. But the high elves are also like a very, they're an urbane society. It's the center of learning and the arcane universities and all of this kind of stuff. So it's like, okay, when I make a new pitch for Silver Plain, it's going to be Murder in the House of Calligraphy, which is a murder mystery set in one of the universities, right? And it gives people the opportunity to, if you like a sort of area or a vibe for something, but don't necessarily kind of jive with the pitch as it sort of stands, there are multiple ways that you could be sent to Tajik the desert, right? There are multiple ways that you could be sent to, Carthorn, for instance, to just explore the different stuff that's happening in the different kind of like corners of the empire, which is sort of what I feel like a good campaign setting is for, in a way, is to like give you a bunch of adventure hooks to kind of, I don't know, grasp onto.
Yeah. I'm actually, just to step back to the kind of like continuity question. Do you envision these things all happening sequentially? Like, obviously they have to, right? If like, characters transfer between games. But it just occurred to me that it would be interesting to be like, well, if you're playing the murder mystery in Silver Plain, is the Beastkin, rampage happening in the background, even if it doesn't really necessarily directly hit the story? And
yeah, in a certain sense, I think the answer is yes, but only it's complicated because I have thought about this question, and it mostly fucks with 7th Expedition. So 7th Expedition is incredibly time locked. That is a game that gets played day by day, week by week, month by month, right? So much so that like the players started at the beginning of March. So basically at the beginning of spring, they're now in sort of summer, right? And like seasons will affect them. And there is this really, really kind of dogmatic approach because it's primarily an exploration game, right? You're going hex by hex throughout the map. You can travel a certain amount of hexes per day, all this other kind of stuff. The interaction between that and Heretic Heroes, which was played kind of hour by hour, but less day by day, right? Heretic Heroes lasted a couple of weeks, but not a couple of days. Well, Heretic Heroes wrapped. 7th Expedition isn't going to wrap anytime soon. That 7th Expedition is like a 1 to 20 campaign, right? Heretic Heroes was like 1 to 4 kind of thing. How do those two things interact, right? Like, is the clock of Ceran tied to 7th Expedition? Can I not advance too far forward because like if I say years past or something along these sorts of lines, because it might make sense for that to happen, right? One of the things that happens in Liberation in the Heathlands is there is sort of a time skip, right? You don't just go to day 1, we have walked into the Heathlands. You pick up a little bit in media res, right? In the sense that you have established a medium sort of set of base of operations. And I'll obviously kind of explain what the status quo is and all that kind of stuff. How much time passed in between those two things? If it's months at a time, now the Heretic Heroes characters are ahead of the 7th Expedition characters. How do I reconcile that? And the answer is I don't. I'm just not going to worry about it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the pitches themselves, my answer, I think, is probably that unless you guys are playing in a pitch, it's not really happening yet. It would maybe be the kind of thing where I could see myself reference it sort of obliquely in the sense that like the Siege of Corquea got referenced to you guys because it is like a battle that is sort of happening in the background, right? But like I wouldn't want to sort of cut something like that off without giving you sort of like a chance or an opportunity to like address it.
I would say you could also like, the version of this in my head I was thinking is like, if we play the I'm never going to remember the names of these, the murder mystery and the Beastkin, right? There's a version where we play one of them and then the other, and that they happen in sequence, and so the actions in one have consequences for the other. There's also
that definitely would happen. Yeah,
there's also a version of this where, like, they are technically happening simultaneously, so that, like, a thing that happens in one, like, doesn't happen immediately in the other, and it just pops up. Obviously, like, it can't work if they're the same characters across the two, but, like, if we do the Siege of Kovolgrad, right, I could see a consequence of us stopping the beacon, which is, having an effect on the Siege of Kovolgrad, if not super directly, right? Like, how does that change things?
It's pretty direct, to be honest with you. One of the things that was important to me when I was sort of sketching out Heretic Heroes, and this was the part where I kind of, like, arrived at the different endings, is that it's not just the specific sense of you guys have changed the nature of the beacon, therefore things are very different, right? It is the long, far-reaching sense of Kovolgrad is a different pitch now because of the nature of the revelation of the beacon. And Kovolgrad would also be, so for instance, if you play through, like, Liberation in the Heathlands, let's say you play through Liberation in the Heathlands, which is obviously building this rebellious crusade on the other end of the Leonin hierarchy, right, which is obviously huge kind of thing. Well, Kovolgrad gets affected by that too. And I want the different things to kind of pinball off of each other in that way. And that was a pretty important kind of pillar of all of this. I mean, the real thing is that the Ordo Primus, which is one of the bad guys that we established in Heretic Heroes, the Ordo Primus is, like, in a bunch of different... It is also the same bad guy that is in... The Siege of Corquea has Ordo Primus, also has some other stuff. Kovolgrad has Ordo Primus, and I guess it was just actually those three that had it, right? But, like, they all interact with each other. So, for instance, one of the big consequences of the beacon coming down is that the Ordo Primus have magical powers, but paladins who had been using the beacon for power, which you had seen by praying to statues of Eurus, have now lost that ability. And so the Ordo Primus is actually even more important to kind of, like, the military strength of the Leonin hierarchy because of the choice that you made to dismantle the beacon in Heretic Heroes.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, no, that all makes sense, right?
Yeah, and I was going to say, and then there's the other version of this. This is the part that Rachel was really interested in, which I feel like I have to mention because it, I don't know, it's a whole other thing. Because she was asking me about the Skittergate. You guys found the Skaven, they were sort of underneath the thing. And I sort of explained that my thought process with this was purely designing it backwards from answering kind of questions of why in the world building, which was to say, when I was designing Kala Ojutai, I was like, there has to be other threats. I knew the trenchworks were there. I was like, what if there are Skaven in the trenchworks? Okay, great. Okay, why are there Skaven in the trenchworks? Well, they are not Skaven all that much in the other parts of the Leonin Empire, so there's got to be a good reason for them. Well, they have Skittergate technology. We know they can open these portals. Okay, cool. There's a Skittergate down there. That's great. This gives them an out. The party can now activate the Skittergate to get out of here and, retreat from the prison if they choose that sort of, like, ending outcome. And then it was like, okay, well, why is there a Skittergate at the bottom of this prison? Like, that has to make some amount of sense. And that was when I was like, well, what if the Skaven know about the beacon and they want to do the thing that you guys saw in the drawings, which was infect the beacon. They wanted to, they actually essentially wanted to take Terej out and put in their own warlock engineer into the beacon to create the warp fire beacon, which has a bunch of things, a bunch of other sort of, like, implications or whatever. And just, like, following those chains of logic is a lot of how this kind of stuff tends to come together, which was why I was so happy when I could close the gap on why the Soulstorm happened, because of the Soulstorm is happening because of Kovolgrad, right? Like, I felt like I always need to have good answers to these kinds of questions and to be able to bring them back and reincorporate them, because otherwise it just feels sort of like random.
Yeah, no, and there's, like, I don't know, there's interesting stuff that happened with the Skittergate too, right? Because, like, we told the Leonin Empire about it, right? The Ordo Primus probably has control of the trenchworks at this point. I don't know. Maybe they decide to invade the Skaven Empire, right? Like, or something like that, right?
Yeah, true. Honestly, the part of why, or the question that was hardest to answer but most interesting was, how did the Skaven know about the beacon? because nobody else does, right? So how is it that the Skaven were able to figure out about this thing if even Leonin inside of the hierarchy weren't able to figure out about this thing? And there is an answer to that question, but whatever. You'd have to figure it out. Yeah. I feel like this is like part of what makes, I guess, interesting sort of like world building happen.
Sure.
When it comes to what you're looking for in the pitches, I don't know. I guess we can just start like talking about some of them. I obviously feel like you have a lot of I would expect that liberation in the Heathlands is going to be something that you're I'm
definitely interested in. I don't need it to be next.
Yeah.
I have not read the new pitches. So we talked about this before the cast that we decided to hold it. I basically kind of like I like a lot of different things. Like I could have a good time in the Siege of Kovalgrad. Like I've got a character idea for that. I've talked to you briefly about it. I could probably come up with character concepts for anything. But and part of this is supposed to be about genre. What are the new pitches and what are you trying to capture? Genre?
So there's a couple of new, there's a couple of like genre pieces. So Liberation in the Heathlands is obviously this sort of rebellion kind of story, which I think honestly drew a lot from the fact that I was watching Andor right as things were ending and I was writing these. And I have thought a lot about what it looks like to kind of put together kind of like a guerrilla, revolution against like an authoritarian empire and stuff like that. And it's also tinged with sort of the crusade aspect of it. The crusade, there's the fire crusade, the prophet of Zakesh in the empire. His crusade is called the Everflame. They're basically bad guys, right? Like not super bad guys. You can actually ally with them in a couple of different places, right? But like there's a whole pitch, Crush the Crusade, which is about them overreaching and demanding tithes. This is the Seven Samurai one, where they're demanding tithes from like a local town in Barova, and you guys have to kill a bunch of crusaders in order to stop that from happening. Like they're a little bit like morally ambiguous, but this is sort of the opposite of that. Terej is a good guy, and he is doing a good thing, which is bringing, truth back to an empire that has dedicated itself to sort of censorious rigidity, shall we say. And so but that's like a very D&D story, I feel like, right? It's the kind of story that feels like it's something that you could really. There's a lot of D&D games that are built on this kind of like genre stuff. And some of what I was looking to do elsewhere really was tapping into other sort of genres. So the next one down that I renamed, my original name for this, which I don't think I will, it almost feels like a spoiler to say. I call this one the Boyar's Daughter. Boyars are lords in Barova in the dwarf territory. There's a secluded village, and there's the disappearance of the boyar's eldest daughter, and it prompts this investigation, basically by you guys, the player. You are brought in when the Akshina, who are sort of the secret police that the dwarves employ. The boyar's wife brings you in because she doesn't believe that the Akshina have actually like done their work, sort of investigating. And it's all about the difference between the boyars and the serfs. So the peasants who are working the land, the serfs are superstitious people. They're very private. They're very motivated to get vengeance against their liege. What's happening in there? And this is all about like sort of, horror and occult conspiracy stuff. The main inspiration I had for this actually was weirdly The Village. The M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village?
Yeah.
That was the one that I was thinking about. I was thinking about that. I was also thinking quite a lot about Midsummer when I was putting this one together, because I just kind of feel like, that stuff is actually pretty well suited for D&D. We enter into a town and the town are acting real suspicious, and there's bad stuff going on, and there's Twin Peaks vibes about kind of everything. It's probably one of the only ways I feel like you can really deliver like a horror narrative in a D&D setting.
Yeah, no, we've talked about this before. It's hard to do horror in D&D just because of like player expectations about how the mechanics work, right? Like classically getting players to run away from a fight is like nearly impossible.
And I think part of it is also the mystery focus is really good at delivering that, because you give players a thing to care about and to focus on, which isn't fighting, right? It is, you can have fights, you can have things happen that cause kind of conflict, but like the horror is happening on sort of like a psychological level, which is wild that I feel like I'm saying this, because like I also very successfully, I guess, depending on how, you want to look at this stuff with the white deer that Rachel has talked about before, that's all horror stuff that was essentially happening inside of this D&D game, right? That's kind of like working on a sort of similar level, but in that essence, it was secondary to sort of the fighting, right? Like here is this kind of menace that when you think about the way that they work, it's pretty fucked up and horrifying, right? Like somebody is going to mutate into a beastman. Somebody who's so infected, they're plague cursed. And so they're going to have a child, and this child that they have is going to it's going to have a goat face, and they're going to have to leave it alone in the woods. All that is like horror stuff, right? But at the end of the day, you are still just killing fucking beastmen, right? In game kind of mechanical terms. I feel like you're doing a similar sort of thing with mystery in a pitch like The Boyar's Daughter, where you're making it about, okay, we're investigating crime scenes, we're rolling out skill checks, we're doing deception, we're sneaking around and trying to uncover stuff. The villagers are very private. They don't want to tell you what's going on. Clearly there's weird stuff happening in the background, right? Maybe it's all straightforward. Maybe the villagers just fucking hate the Boyar, so they captured and killed his eldest daughter because they're assholes. That's a perfectly plausible thing. I'm gonna be real with you. It's not fucking what happens. That's a little too boring. But, like, if you just kind of want to approach it on that sort of crime scene investigation level, it works from that perspective, I guess.
Just imagining, this being like, you have this whole thing set up for like, horror and like, creepy, spooky vibes. And the party just rolls in and treats it like it's NCIS, right? Like, I
actually kind of feel like you could get pretty far with an investigator sort of character. Like imagine like Beauregard or something.
I was thinking about Beauregard, right? Yeah.
Yeah, imagine playing Beauregard and in a way that feels like you're playing against a Scooby-Doo villain or something. Because Scooby-Doo, the premise is that, ooh, something spooky, but it's always like Mr. Jenkins, the pissed off janitor who is just, faking it, right?
Yeah.
And like you could kind of play that in a character, but in a world where actually ghosts do exist sometimes, right?
Or it's like X-Files, right? Like, Mulder always, sees it, and Scully is like, happens to be looking the wrong way, and, and doesn't see the supernatural stuff. It's like, it's all perfectly logical explanation, right? Like, I feel like that's a pretty good pitch for like a party dynamic, right? Yeah.
You could have the exorcist cleric who takes all of this super incredibly seriously, and there are things that are going bump in the night, and there are secrets about this world that no written word has ever captured, and all of this other kind of stuff. And then you have, I don't know, Russ Cole or someone who is demystifying all of that by with good old fashioned detective work and yeah,
it's
exactly.
a little harder to pull off in this kind of, because it's got to be like, it could be a ghost, or it could just be like an angry neighbor, right? Like, not everything's a ghost, Esmeralda, right? Like, yeah. Sometimes your neighbor's just an asshole.
Yeah, the next one after that is Murder in the House of Calligraphy. This was the one. This is the one that was also set in Silver Plain with like the half elves and politics and something like that. The extra conceit here is that it's during a convention of scribes from across the empire, and the most prolific writer of the modern era is the murder victim, right? So there's this extra layer of like, who killed this person and why, right? Like, why was it important to sort of silence this voice at this time? What were they about to announce that was going to, kind of undo everything? And in this one, my thinking was actually kind of it was very film noir sort of forward, of just sort of a murder mystery around a big secret and actually figuring out what that secret is and kind of getting to the heart of the conspiracy. I was thinking a lot about Chinatown, actually, because Chinatown is a really good example of this, right? It's all about they're controlling the Los Angeles sort of like water supply. That's like the secret on offer. And then obviously there's the whole thing with, I guess it's Faye Dunaway's parentage, for spoilers for Chinatown, I guess. But like that was what I was really going for with this one. And it also feels very self-contained, which is nice. This is one that, I'm going to be real, doesn't have like a branching off point, right? It doesn't really unlock anything, like it's not like there is a liberation in the Heathlands chapter 2 kind of thing, even though like all of these, there is a pretty momentous kind of decision, and figuring out what that secret is and what's going on, it has pretty big consequences for the rest of this stuff.
That is neat. I like that. Just as kind of like a world question, I know we've talked about this, but I can't remember. Do you like half elves, like true half elves, just like not exist? Like are like, sapient species just not capable of interbreeding?
I actually think I said the opposite of that. I think the thing that I said, I've had this thought in my brain for a long time, which is that in BoJack Horseman, this is so dumb. In BoJack Horseman, okay, when a human and an animal person get together, sometimes they have a human baby and sometimes they have an animal baby. And that's kind of what I think it is. Okay. If an elf and a human get together, they could have a son and a daughter, and the son could be human and the daughter could be elven, right? And I feel like it's probably 100% either way. I don't know that I've actually canonized that. I think I've like mentioned this to people because people have asked, right? But the nature of half elves in the world, is that they are essentially just full-blooded elves who have taken on a different name because they think fuck you.
Yeah.
Right?
And funnily enough, I think the way that the heritages work in Pathfinder, I think you could probably get away with most of that too, right? Like there's not as much physiological stuff, right? Like there's some like fluff about like, half elves don't live as long as elves or whatever, but like that's not really mechanically represented anyway, so you could probably just like, there's like an adopted ancestry feat that kind of like works for any of this, right? If you're an elf raised by dwarves or whatever. So that all kind of works there.
I mean, they obviously removed half elves from this was not the original version of it, but I just think it explains it a little bit cleaner this way. And I like the idea that there are, I've always really loved the high elf, dark elf, wood elf sort of split. This is something that's in Warhammer. It's obviously, they fucked it up, I guess, a little bit, in, Warcraft, right? But it's just like I've always enjoyed sort of like the different sort of phenotypes of elves, and it just created a really easy answer. Actually, it was originally that they were Eladrin, because Eladrin were the 4th edition. When I wrote Ceran originally, it was 4th edition, and Eladrin were. I had to solve for the lack of Eladrin in 5th edition, basically. And also because I don't really like the Feywild stuff that comes along with all of that. Obviously, Ceran is in a very multiplanar sort of campaign setting.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so what are some of the other pitches?
So the next one after that is Hunters in the Dusk. This one is set in the Green Reach. So the interesting thing about the Green Reach, this is where the elves of the Wood Elves, right? There is Silverne, which is the Sequoia City. I've had this idea ever since we went to the Sequoia National Forest like 5 years ago, but it is a city that, has essentially grown like New York City with skyscrapers and all of that kind of thing, but inside of these gigantic trees that are sustained by druidic magic. So this is the Sequoia City on the shore of a lake, I think it is. There's like a whole thing with the canal and all this other stuff. But basically, while there are the Fangs, who are like the Ranger military force, they're kind of like half military, half cops, because they simultaneously guard against the Beastmen. They are like the people who hunt down and kill nascent beastmen war herds that pop up all over the Green Reach. But they are also, they're also cops, right? They're running around enforcing laws, that kind of thing. The Fangs and the circles of druids are coming into kind of conflict. So it's a very urban sort of political campaign that surrounds basically a protest turning into a riot, and you guys are choosing sides between, you know, sort of these two political forces in the city, and furthering their own interests from there. This one is interesting. I don't know that there's, I think a lot of the times in terms of like movies and television, this one is really meant to be kind of a choose your own thing where neither the Fangs nor the Druids are really sort of right, but you make your, you choose, right? Are you going to side with the police who are cracking down maybe too heavily, but maybe not on the new primal magic users, or are you going to work with the druids to sort of push back against, I don't know, it's like ACAB or something like that, right? Like
again, things popped into my head is like, elves with like thick mustaches, like, you stop resisting, right?
Casting poison spray. Don't spray me, bro. Right?
Shocking grasp. Don't tase me, bro.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, part of it is also that, like, one of the things that's interesting about the Greenreach and like Druid stuff is primal magic is very old, but like it was also forgotten, so it's weirdly old but new. There's this whole thing in the Greenreach about how 100 years ago there were just clerics. There were no druids. It was only really in recent times that there are people who are rediscovering sort of druidic magic, and it has grown this gigantic city with that power, and it's really important, and it's a whole new thing. But what are the limits of primal power? What does it mean? Is it bad and superstitious? All of that kind of stuff is happening in Hunters in the Dusk, and you can kind of take it in that crime way where you become like a revolutionary fighting against the police, right? Or you can take it the opposite way and become and it's like a cop show kind of thing. You're now playing
what's you gonna do?
I don't even know what a good
bad boys.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, I guess. I feel like that puts it in bad terms too. I don't know. I want to. It's almost like maybe like Die Hard or something. It's like there's a lot of cop movies and stuff like that, but I'm trying to think about one that would like map onto this pretty cleanly, and there really isn't a good one. It's just that the both sides have good and bad points, and you kind of align with one or the other, and I don't want people to just kind of hate the cops or hate the druids instinctively, yeah, exactly. It actually reminds me of quite a lot of Skyrim. In Skyrim you had the Imperials who were like colonizing people, but also the Stormcloaks were really racist. And
Skyrim is for the North. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody hates the fucking, what is it, the Altmer?
Yeah. It's because of the I don't know. There's the Altmer like won a war against the Imperials and imposed really, really heavy sanctions and shit. I don't fucking remember Skyrim lore, even though I played that game about 1 million times.
You don't even remember the 37 Lessons of Vivek, which I'm not even sure is the right number yet.
Is it 37? I thought it was 36.
It's probably. I probably have the wrong number.
I can't even remember the number. Yeah, you're probably right. Listen, you remember the lessons. Okay.
I remember like one of the lessons at this point. I gotta look this up.
Josh in the chat says, "But all cops are bad, bro." Listen, that's an answer, right? Like if you want to fuck on the cops, you are allowed to do that. But the cops also save you guys from the Beastmen. Okay, they're an important. It's like the thing I was actually looking for a little bit with the Fangs is that they're half cop, half firefighter in a way, because if you think of the Beastmen as sort of this force of nature threat, which they really are, they're a lot like a fire,
right.
And you need to have firefighters, and everybody likes firefighters except for me. And like,
wait, you don't like firefighters?
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Do you know? Have I never told you this story? I used to work with a bunch of firefighters. They were all fucking assholes. I hated them. They were all such dicks.
Oh, okay.
And they were. This is when I was a kid. This is when we were caddies. There were a lot of caddies who were firefighters who were on because like they're on not rounds. What do they call it? Call? They were like on call or whatever. And they were just like dicks. They were just like, they're very, very pretentious and sanctimonious. And I was a kid. What do you want? I was a teenager. I hated everybody, right? But there just happened to be a lot of them, and I thought that they all sucked. And Yeah, they were not very noble. They were mostly doing it for the paycheck and because it was a really easy job. And they tried to convince me not to go to college and become a firefighter. Actually, that is a true story.
Yeah, well, my dad was a volunteer firefighter back in the day, which is obviously
that is more noble.
Yeah. It's a very different thing, right? Like there's a lot. I just didn't expect when I hear people talk about hating firefighters, it's like the government shouldn't be doing this. It's privately contract, right? Like that's the type of thing from like like some of some of the other side of the world, right? Like is
yeah. Yeah, the Fangs have that, if you look at the Fangs and you see, what, these are a bunch of people who are a little traditional, a little conservative, a little old school, right? But they have this they do this deeply risky public service, right? Where they go out and they find this sentient disease that is killing people. Like you could look at it that way. Or you could also look at them and say, they are, nobody is ever going to side with these fucking cops because it is truly like a liberal conservative sort of thing. The Fangs are conservative. They're traditional. They're kind of traditional values and sort of things. The Druids are progressive in a way because they are pushing the boundaries of new magic and stuff like that. And it's the Fangs who are sort of cracking down and trying to impose laws to prevent them from, over indexing this power that they don't really understand. And yeah, so I don't know. Yeah. No, anyway, that's Hunters in the Dusk.
I would say like that's it. Like, one, how would you handle if the party decides to split, right? Because I can definitely play characters that I don't agree with, right? Like, and I could find, I could build a character to be like, to align with one side or the other. But how would you deal with if like half the party is like absolutely not and half the party is like absolutely, absolutely?
That's actually really tough. I think I would just force you guys to make a decision. Like I would force you to do the fucking debate because I wouldn't want to anti-magic zealot incoming. Yeah, that would be a good game for it, right? I wouldn't want it to be that you guys walk into the campaign knowing which side you want to go for, because part of it is actually this whole thing starts with the protest, and it is on you to figure out what the protest is about and to talk to people and to hear their arguments and to come to your own conclusion about who's right, who's wrong, right? All of that kind of stuff. And it's not a clean process. It's not, two people at a podium. It is protesters and cops, and they are shouting at each other and all this other kind of stuff.
And some of them are probably dumb and don't represent their, their side as cleanly as they could, right? Like, or the other side.
Exactly. And like, how do you know, this really does center around the risks of primal magic, right? How do you know when a druid tells you primal magic is good and there's no downsides that he's telling the truth, right?
Or that even
you
knows.
Actually kind of don't. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't know. Nobody even really knows. So maybe there is a reason to not, sort of go wild with this sort of power and stuff like that. And it's like those questions are tough to answer. And that's a lot of what I want to sort of set this thing up. So I wouldn't want to phrase it in such a way that people are automatically going to choose one side or the other.
Sure.
I would probably want to give them an understanding of kind of the pitch, like I did obviously here, and let you guys make your own sort of decisions. Because it could even just be something like the head druid sounds like a sanctimonious prick, and I don't fucking care if he's right. He's an asshole. Or the head Fang is just a fucking fascist, jackbooted whatever, and I don't care. I actually think the Fangs do a great job or whatever, but I want to remove this person from power. Like you could also take it on other sort of orthogonal angles from that front. This is kind of like that choose your own adventure sort of thing. Cause part of me was thinking about like, I don't want to create too many stories where you guys have to, Heretic Heroes are very much a choose your own adventure sort of thing, but stuff like, some of the other ones that I've talked about, like the Boyar's daughter. There is an answer to the mystery of what happened to the Boyar's daughter. There's not multiple. I mean, I guess you have multiple decisions on how it resolves, but like, there's no other secrets. There's one big thing to unravel there. Whereas in Hunters in the Dusk, it's a little bit more of a sandbox. Okay, next one is the Scarecrow King, which I really love this name. This is honestly mostly because I thought of the name. This one is set in Sunbrush, where the humans are. The idea is there is a group of murderous somethings who are attacking kind of innocent farmers out in the fields. They attack with sickles and scythes with these burlap bags over their heads. They are called the Threshers, and they're led by the Scarecrow King. They've massacred a whole town, which is really how you guys get kind of involved. You're supposed to, I wrote this. I said, you seek the Threshers out with the goal of regicide. Your job is to kill the Scarecrow King. What's he doing out there? Who knows? How does that happen? Figure it out, right? Like, it's that kind of story. This is another one that has very horror vibes, which I was trying to go to. And in a certain sense, when we went to the haunted house 2 weeks ago, when I was talking about how, like, you could tie this all together as like some fucked up cult in the woods or whatever, like, this was me like channeling the Scarecrow King into their things. I actually think I might change it from burlap bags to jack-o'-lanterns, just because I said that thing of like, jack-o'-lanterns are spooky,
Burlap sacks is like as clothes and jack-o'-lantern heads.
Yeah. Making a Reaper King deck. I was not thinking about Reaper King, but definitely, it has some of those vibes. There's a couple of these that have tags. And this has one of the tags, Occult, which is like a Pathfinder power source. The Boyard's Daughter also has the Occult tag, but it has additional sort of ramifications for like Ceran kind of as a setting. And that's part of what's going on, right? Like, where you are delving into kind of these superstitious secrets that are at the heart of, how this world works. But this was one because the other Sunbrush game is, I think it was the Prophet of Cyrexis. I was just like, it was like a little bit more kind of urban, takes things in a completely different direction. And I wanted to, I like the idea of really going out into the farm, into the farmlands and seeing what life is like on the fringes of sort of these fields and things like that.
Very cool. Yeah. What's next?
The next one is The Bazaar at the End of the World. This one is set in Tajik, in the city. Tajik has one city, Andalus. It's a city on the cliffs. But the idea with this one is in the prologue, actually narration. I don't even know that I will run like a combat or whatever. You're in a bar and a huge bar fight breaks out. And in the process of it, magic is, slung and all this other kind of stuff. And everybody else in the bar dies except for your characters. And there is an incredibly valuable item that is left behind. Clearly, this is what everyone was fighting for. Who was buying it? Who was selling it? Where was it stolen from? Like, all of those are questions that are up to sort of you guys to figure out. But this is a pretty deep crime campaign. This is actually based on No Country for Old Men. It's the same sort of premise. With, that is drug money from the cartels, but it's the same sort of thing of like, you are in the right place at the right time / wrong place at the right time. You don't know. I mean, hey, who knows, right? What are you gonna do when there's a big sack of, let's call it gold. It's not gold, obviously. There's a big sack of gold at the end, and there are the 6 of you who can figure out what to do with it.
That sounds, is it more mystery or is it more thriller? Is it more like...
It's probably more thriller. It's really about, can you figure out what the thing is and can you sell it? This is another sort of one and done in the sense that your characters have the option to sell the thing to the buyer and get life-changing money. Okay. Right? Like, if we were to think about this in like real terms, it would be like, you have found the special computer chip and some criminal was about to sell it to an arms dealer who's going to sell it for $100 million. You can now be that arms dealer and pick up the $100 million if you want, or you can do other stuff with it. Right. There's more kind of stuff, but I obviously don't want to explain what the thing is until you guys see it for yourselves.
Sure. Yeah.
No, but it's like big MacGuffin, I don't know. Maltese Falcon. That's actually a terrible example because the Maltese Falcon is worthless.
Yeah. What was
it? Would be like,
There's definitely
the Death Star plans or something.
There's definitely a movie where this is like, the plot where like somebody falls over the MacGuffin is trying to like pawn it off before things go to shit. But I can't think of it. Yeah.
Honestly, a big one for this one is Mission Impossible.
Okay.
Because Mission Impossible tends to, revolve around these sorts of plot where it's like, this is the, there's in the most recent Mission Impossible movies, there's the cruciform key, which is a key that like does this. It's not that, but it's just like an interesting thing that everybody in the world wants. And there's going to be there's going to be a rendezvous on a train, and it's like that kind of stuff. But all of it is set in the city of Andalus, which is in contrast to obviously the other campaign that's set in Tajik is Ripples in the Sand with Chikasia, where you guys are out in the desert doing digs for power crystals and artificial history and all of that kind of stuff.
Is it literally Chikasia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is before I knew that she was a magic card that I could build around. To be fair, I wrote that pitch like, I don't know, when do we start playing, like April? I wrote that pitch in like fucking April. I only built Takasia way later on when I was like, oh, actually they made a card for the character that I'm sort of paying homage to here, but it is literally Takasia.
Fair enough.
The next one after that is the Siege of Corqueia, which obviously I have alluded to. The Siege of Corqueia is kind of neat. Did you ever read? Do you know about No Man's Land? Batman No Man's Land?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so in 1999, there was a Batman comic called No Man's Land, which was like a whole thing. It was like the whole Batman universe sort of did this, which was there is an earthquake in Gotham that is so devastating that the United States government condemns the entire city. Gotham is an island in the middle, like Manhattan kind of thing. They condemn the entire city rather than rebuild it. And so they blow up all of the bridges and they say, this is sort of no man's land. And the idea is that criminals stay behind, illegal immigrants, just like there are a lot of people who can't evacuate from the city, and Batman stays behind to regulate them. But you kind of get this like weird urban post-apocalyptic kind of warfare thing going on where like Two-Face has a gang and Mr. Freeze has a gang and they're fighting over territory, and it's almost like Fallout in a way or something like that, because they're all fighting over like food and supplies and like resources.
Or like The Division, or like there's a bunch of stories that's like, New York is isolated, or some city is isolated from everything else, and it's like the lawless zone.
Yeah, it's absolutely that stuff. The Siege of Corqueia is essentially like that writ large, where you have you have the Legion, so like the military, who are trying to maintain battle lines and keep the siege from collapsing into a sack of the city. You have the Church of Zakesh, which is like trying to maintain morale. You have gangs throughout the city, right? It's pretty lawless because it's a siege. It's been going for however long. No food or water has been getting, or I guess water is getting in, but no food is getting in here. So how are you going to sort of like survive? And so in that sense, it's kind of a sandbox game. Like you got to get to align with factions and choose sides and pick battles and stuff like
who
that.
Is sieging the city?
But really the end goal is breaking the siege and fighting the Ordo Primus and probably.
Okay, so the Ordo Primus are sieging Corqueia.
Technically speaking, if you just want to escape, that is also like if you just want to get out of the siege without getting killed by Leonin, right? Like that's also sort of a way to do it. But
who are the players supposed to be?
It depends. You could be sort of allied to any of these sort of groups. This would be one where I would probably explain like the gangs and, like I said, the Church, the Legion, that kind of thing. Or you could just be like ordinary citizens who are trapped in the siege. There are a lot of Dragonborn. There are a lot of people who were just caught in the city when the siege started happening, and didn't have an opportunity to sort of like get out and leave.
Awesome. Yeah. No, this is different than Kovalgrad, because Kovalgrad's like a straight up military, and we're supposed to be soldiers in that, right? Like,
yeah, Kovalgrad, Kovolgrad is different. You can be soldiers, but you're also conscripts. Kovolgrad also has factions, but Kovolgrad is a little bit complicated because like the Legion is weak there and they need reinforcements, so they just start conscripting people. And so even if like you could play a soldier, like I am part of the Legion, right? But you could also just play a conscript. I am a native of Kovolgrad who get conscripted. This is actually the Streltsy. This is all stuff that's in the axe that Merle's character Svanko gets is like a Streltsy axe. The Streltsy are sort of like the civilian militia, essentially, that is like coming to in Kovolgrad. Kovolgrad is much more of a battle, though. There are battle mechanics both for Kovolgrad and for Kovolgrad and for Korquea, and they actually use the same battle mechanics, which is I renamed some stuff, but it is based on the Pathfinder book that you gave me, the Battle Cry Pathfinder book. They call it victory points, which I think is super fucking lame. I call it something else, but the point is that like you can affect how the battle goes, and making certain decisions can lead to a victory or a loss. And you know, neither of those are sort of guaranteed, and you don't necessarily know kind of what the outcome is going to be, and you can just make decisions based on what you think is right and still end up sort of like losing. But at the end of Kovolgrad, there will be a definitive kind of winner or loser. That's not necessarily true for Korquea. If you just want to get the fuck out of there, that is fair enough. And the siege itself can kind of, you know, resolve on its own terms.
Makes sense. Very cool.
The next one, which I hate that I have now found a better word for this, or a better title for this. The next one, this is in the Shattered Sea. It is called Heat. And it is the movie Heat, because I like that movie a lot. The idea is that there's a city in the Shattered Sea. There's like a big island in the Shattered Sea that actually has some like overland sort of travel. So this is where the port, you know, the airships and the Odyssons and stuff like that unload their cargo and it gets distributed. And there are a lot of robberies. There are more robberies here than anywhere else. And you guys are part of like the SWAT team, the special task force that responds to those sort of cases. And when, you know, a string of robberies point to a greater culprit, you got to sort of figure out who that is and kind of what's going on. This is mostly just, I think it would be neat to play. It's a very combat heavy one where it is, you guys are sort of not doing anything, and then the call goes out. There's a robbery. You have to respond, and boom, now you're in combat and you're fighting and you're doing all of this other kind of stuff. And there is like a greater mystery to unravel and all of the rest of it, but it is, I don't know, it's pretty straightforward. That one is mostly just cops and robbers.
Fair enough. How many do we have left here?
Only a couple, actually. Then two more. The next one, that is Edict 96. This is, I have wanted to stay away from the top level crazy politics of the Empire. Like, no, you guys don't know who the Emperor is or any of that kind of stuff yet. This is if you want to go that direction. It's set in Sunbrush and Castle Silver, which is the capital of the whole Empire. Emperors have this ability to sort of declare laws to be what they are. These are called edicts. And the most recent emperor has declared Edict 96, which everyone is calling the Red Tithe. And I'll obviously explain what that is in a moment. And you guys are working in one of the offices of the 7 different counselors who come from the different provinces. So it is all about like, this one is like, do you think that legalistic Senate parliamentarian rules in the face of this thing happening are interesting and complex? How do you want to influence the politics of the empire? So in a certain sense, this is a very consequential one, but it's a lot of, you know, that this one's going to be a lot of like social skill checks and stuff like that, and probably a lot less getting in the dirt and fighting and casting spells.
This feels like the type of game.
Actually, I guess you would cast a lot of spells.
Where I roll a character with like the barrister background and like do my you know, like read the law books shit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I know about how the laws in this place work, because again, I can't help world building from the perspective of why does that work that way? But this is like, if you want to start like dealing with high level imperial stuff, imperial politics, and getting to know the emperor and all of that kind of stuff, this is sort of the window to that front. And then the last one is the sinking of Seafoam Spire. So in the Shattered Sea, all of the spires in the Shattered Sea are built out of something called steelstone, which is resistant to water corrosion. It won't erode over time from sort of water, which is pretty useful. Incredibly tough material, right? Which is why, the Shattered Sea can have these spire cities or whatever. The thing that happens in the Sinking of Seafoam City is as the players, you guys all have a prophetic dream that the spire you're on is going to sunder and crack and sink into the sea. And can you prevent that? Can you stop that? Or can you pull at the threads of fate and make something different happen? And also, what's the source of the dreams? It's just like all of that kind of stuff is sort of layered underneath the Sinking of Seafoam Spire. But it's sort of saying, that there's going to be a monumental natural disaster that will destroy this city, and you in it imminently. What do you do? That's
crazy. That feels like that's super interesting. I like these last
that
two
one.
a lot.
You know what? I will give you one extra piece of information. That one has a very truncated. I talked about like weeks and months, day by day. This one it's 72 hours, and there's a raging hurricane. This is like part of the setup. There's a raging hurricane. You can't get off the city, right? Or maybe you can. Maybe you can brave the hurricane. Maybe you can figure something out. Like these are sort of your options. But in 3 days, it's gonna sink. 24 hours remain, like Majora's Mask, I guess. That's the setup for the Sinking of Seafoam Spire.
Well, is it like a Majora's Mask thing? Is it like, do we find like a magic flute that lets us reset the day?
No, there's no time travel. I guess I will clarify. There is no time travel, but there is a deadline. Basically.
Right. 24 is what Jackie Chan opera singers says, which makes sense.
Oh yeah, 24 is 24 is absolutely what it sort of, I don't know, what it kind of is.
Because there is a version of these that are like, you could do like a wild, mechanical pitch. It's like, you've got 72 hours, your character's reset. Like if you don't finish it, the character's reset and you have to like go through it again.
Oh my God.
You have to be.
That's a great idea. Holy fuck! You do like their time loop.
Yeah,
it'd be like a time loop movie, like Edge of Tomorrow or Palm Springs or something. That's an amazing pitch, actually. Holy shit!
Yeah. I think the way you'd want to do it is like several longer sessions, so that like each session is one cycle, right? Like, and eventually, it'd be hard to do because you like, do you reset the clock? Like, do you reset the characters? Like, do they ever like get out of like whatever level they are? And do you want to start them at level 1 if that's the case? It would require some planning to do, right? But I think it could be neat.
God, holy shit! I might like redo this whole thing to be a time loop because it's so cool. But I really, oh man,
we've got 2 months to figure it out.
I do. Yeah, you guys have to vote on it. Anyway, those are some of the different ones that I was sort of like looking for. A lot of the genres I feel like that are I don't think that I have much in here that I would consider to be like classic sort of D&D kind of fantasy stories. I feel like a similar thing that happened in superhero movies, which we've talked about on the cast, where superhero movies kind of started doing these genre fusions, and that's how they became sort of like successful in a longer term sort of format, right? Where you had this like spy thriller for Captain America and Black Widow, right? You had a this like kung fu movie for Shang-Chi. You have a I don't know, just like all of that kind of stuff, right? I guess you could say Thor Love and Thunder is weirdly like a romance. Wild to think about that. Anyway, in a certain sense, I feel like all of these are like genre fusions. None of them are just a party of adventurers who have to go quest with a magic item. They're all, bringing in some level of crime thriller or political drama or something else in there.
So I guess to get to the genre half of this, do you foresee any like issues with like actually executing here, right? Because this is the thing that gets talked, there's a couple different versions of it, like I'm begging you to play another system type stuff, right? It's like I could hack D&D to do like Cyberpunk. It's like there's a system for that. You could just do that instead. and that kind of thing. And how are you planning? Like, are you inventing new mechanics for some of this stuff? Are you planning on just
some of this stuff definitely has new mechanics? So, for instance, in Kovolgrad and Korquea, because those are true military stories where part of what you're doing is trying to win the battle, those have additional mechanics that are kind of like layered on top, which I think I call as like mechanical combat and stuff like that. So, like, for instance, not that you are necessarily going to do this, but like tank warfare is a thing that features in the combat of the Empire. You have onulets that have gigantic ballistas, and you fire and load those ballistas as a tank crew. And, you know, you can imagine a session or something where you guys are running around on this. Essentially, it's like a walker. It's like a battle walker, like an AT-AT or something like that. And your whole thing is about doing kind of like mechanical combat. That's absolutely like a part of, you know, like a part of how this works. And there are some of these that are a little bit more mechanics forward than not. Like some of them I think of as very narrative forward games. So for instance, The Boyar's Daughter is a very narrative forward. There's really not a lot of new mechanics that are thrust in that sort of story. Whereas something like, what would be a good example of this? Heat would be a good one, right? Heat is very mechanics, and there's a lot of stuff that you're doing mechanically. It's stuff like you have access to aerial combat in that game, because part of it is, it's an airship hub. There are airships and ornithopters or whatever, and you guys are the cops, and you can get into a police helicopter chase with somebody if that's how you want to like resolve some of this kind of stuff. So in some of the games that are like more mechanics forward, they have to like hit on some of those things. I'm obviously not planning on getting out of either D&D or Pathfinder, because I think of those as kind of the core. I mean, obviously we can switch between the two of them, but I think of them as sort of the core ways, like the core apparatus that, will end up influencing kind of the world with, though obviously some of those games are going to be more geared towards like the rule sets that, in a certain sense, Pathfinder is a little bit weird on this because of the nature of like downtime activities and like social interactions that kind of type things in a different way. The fact that you can have like skill expertise and take skill feats and stuff like diplomacy for a game like Edict 96 is kind of interesting, which I haven't really thought about the implications of, but you know, it is what it is.
I mean, a lot of the skill feats are less kind of like the ability to influence a particular person, and it's more kind of like, you know, combat tricks or like, you know, ways to mechanically influence groups of people as opposed to individuals and like bonuses and whatnot. So it's not, I don't think it'd be that bad. It was funny when we started talking at the beginning of the episode. It's like, is the rule going to be that the new continent is 5e and that the original, you know, the old continent is PF2e, just because, you know, that would keep it consistent across the games.
It technically would. I actually am going to give people the option. I have made this promise that I'll give people the option to play either. If we wanted to switch back to 5e after this, I'm open to that, right? We could just vote on it again like we did the first time. And I kind of am willing to keep that vote alive as long as this stuff sort of happens. So obviously, friend of the Castarian has said that he doesn't want to learn new systems. And I think he probably, if he were playing in, let's say, the arc after this next arc, he would probably say, I want to go back to 5e. And maybe that would tip the votes in one favor or another. And we sort of run in 5e. The complicated thing is that I also made a promise that I would transpose characters via writing custom subclasses and stuff in order to make it work, which is a bit of an ask, but you know, hey, I feel like I have to promise that, because otherwise it's like, well, I can't play Lomareth because this is going to be a 5e game, and what am I going to do? Rebuild Lomareth as a cleric because there's not a thing for it's like we can just short circuit that, and I can just say I will give you a sorcerer subclass that is built for this thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, we'll see how that goes. I'm actually curious to see how, like, you know, the surviving players feel about it. Like, I know you, like, obviously I'm big on 2e. Josh is in the chat. He's how did you enjoy PF2e, Josh? And who else is? It'd be like
Rachel's in the chat also, playing PF2E. I think you guys are probably going to end up sticking to PF2E. Part of it is that we're picking up two new players, so Lokix and Druid Bull. Lokix has played 5e, but I don't get the sense that, and part of it is like, so in the chat, Josh says, I'm fine with PF2E. I think that's part of it, right? Like, going from inventor to artificer, I guess, is the closest 5e.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like that stuff is complicated.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of makes sense to run it down.
Yeah. No, I you know, Josh says I'm fine with 2e. I'm just curious if people have like stronger opinions. Just because like, you know, I like build, you know, spinning, right? Like that's part of the joy I get out of the game. It's much easier to do that in theory crafting, build crafting is much easier to do in PF2 than 5e just because there's more options, right? Like,
yeah, this is something we talk in 2e, or I'm sorry, in 5e, they want you to opt into. It's like WoW talent builds, right? Like they want you to opt into one of 48 different classes. PF2e is much more about like, can you optimize given this? You know, I'm gonna tip over the toy chest, and it is up to you to build your own Lego, you know, character.
Yeah.
What a mixed metaphor.
Yeah, whatever. It makes sense. It makes sense to me. No, I you know, obviously that's the thing I enjoy. But.
I theoretically, I guess, would be open to doing some stuff. It's funny because I have some ideas for how I want aerial combat, mechanical combat, and stuff like that to look. But there are not good rules for that really anywhere in the D&D or Pathfinder sort of sphere. So for instance, we could end up in, there's actually I think it's like Daggers in the Night or something. That I can't remember what I called it. Like there's the Iron Wa is a big one. This is where you're fighting the orcs who have cars. This is the Mad Max one. Daggers in the Sky. This is the one where you guys are doing Top Gun. You are ornithopter pilots who are flying on an airship into Dark Elf territory to fight against them. And I have a lot of thoughts about how I want that to look, but I am going to have to figure out which will probably mean like reading World War II dogfighter board game rules or something to try and like figure out how to match it up, because that's the feel that you're going for. Is you are your own sort of like fighter squadron, and part of the mechanical combat in that game is going to be, can you dogfight with these dark elves in an effective way? But like those are rules that we'll just kind of like opt into.
Yeah, I would say you might want to pick up like, you know, I know some guys, like a miniatures game to like, you know, do the rules for that kind of stuff. Because there are some, you know, like I've played some very fun games where it's like, oh, you know, like they've abstracted away like the really ticky-tacky stuff about like pitching, like, you know, but it's like, you know, well, you're either pointed up or you're pointed down, and that affects how things work and how like, well, you can hit other things. But you have to layer on some of the class stuff, obviously, in order for it to feel right. But
yeah, the interesting thing about Daggers in the Sky is there are different kinds of ornithopters, whose names I don't super remember. It's like the heron, the osprey, and is it kingfisher or something like that? The heron is kind of like a bomber. It's actually a 2-person ornithopter that has this. I don't even know how to describe it, but like if you are looking at the YouTube, you would see it has this like thing where hanging off the bottom of it is a ballista turret that can just one-shot other aircraft. And you have a pilot and a gunner, basically. And then the other ones are more straightforward, kind of like 1v1, kind of like... in my mind, I was thinking about it like Y-Wings and X-Wings from Star Wars, right? Where you have certain it's like Y-Wings, X-Wings, and A-Wings. So in Battlefront 2 terms, you had bombers who were very good at taking out big targets and doing stuff like that. You had interceptors who were very good at sort of dealing with, you know, the air-to-air dogfighting sort of stuff. And then you kind of had like a mid class. That's exactly what it looks like. The Kingfishers are good at, they're fast and nimble, and they can do a lot of stuff with mobility and movement and stuff, but they're not very lethal. The Ospreys are super, are more lethal, more mid-range. They can do a lot of damage, but they don't have the maneuverability. And then the Heron is very like slow and big, but it has this gigantic thing on it that can do devastating sort of damage. And I as I was sketching all of that kind of like stuff together, I don't have rules for any of this. I just know how I want it to sort of like work in action, because I don't know. I listen, I just think it's neat.
Yeah, fair enough. Huh. All right. Well, do you have anything else you want to talk about here before?
You know, I guess I just ought to say for the record, especially for Drudball or Lokix, if you guys hear this in the aftermath, feel free to reach out. And then Josh, you asked when are we going to be voting on this anyway? I don't know, sometime soon. We'll figure it out. Okay, we'll do it at Mango's wedding, even though I don't think anybody's going to be there.
I was saying
anyway,
yeah.
How was your week?
It was good.
Do you want to talk about Arc Raiders? I've seen you play so much fucking Arc Raiders.
Yeah, well, so the big thing is I hit the true ending for Hades 2. That was the biggest thing I did.
Okay, very cool.
I hit it on the day that they released a new ending for it because apparently the community was like, I don't want to spoil anything, but like, they thought the ending wasn't well justified enough, and so they added basically like more justification. They tweaked the ending a little bit. I don't feel like going back to like apparently you have to like replay all of it, so I might just watch it on YouTube instead. But it's a good game. It's fun. I just kind of got like it has this problem where part of the attraction of the runs is that like you get better, like you have meta progression, but then you also have like meta difficulty that you can dial up to make the runs more challenging and to compensate for your increased power in the meta progression. But when you want to get the story bits done, it's like, well, I don't want to be like on the edge of whether or not I actually beat the run because you need to beat the run to progress the story, right? So like I ended up turning off all of the difficulty increases and just like slamming through a couple runs to actually get to the end of the story. And so I would have to do that like I think another like half dozen times at least in order to like redo everything. Like I don't want to fucking do that, right? Like the runs are fun in their own sense, but like at a certain point, they stop being challenging because, you know, you're powerful enough and you're good enough at the game. But it's a good game still. I'd recommend it to people. I will probably come back to it.
Is it better than Hades 1?
Is
that something you could even evaluate?
I think it is, just because mechanically it's kind of like, you know, a pure iteration on it, right? Story-wise, I think it's got more stakes, right? Like Hades 1, the stakes are, you know, Zagreus is a grumpy teen and like, you know, and his dad's kind of mean and he needs to like fight past his dad to see his mom, who is his dad's Hades, his mom's Persephone, right? And like, you know, he can only spend like 15 seconds on the surface before like, you know, he gets cast back into hell type of deal. And it's about like, you know, it's about family. It's about, you know, growing up. It's about, you know, building relationships with the, you know, your estranged father and, you know, your relatives in Olympus, right? That like they only kind of sort of know about you and maybe kind of like don't actually care about you. And you're just kind of like interested in pissing off Hades and dealing with all of that. The stakes in Hades 2 are that Kronos, you are Melinoe, Zagreus' sister. Kronos, your grandfather, has usurped, like, you know, when you were a baby, usurped Hades, froze all of your relatives in time, and you know, you have been raised since birth to get revenge for your family and free them. And so the stakes are a lot higher, right? Like,
yeah. Do you still get powers from gods?
Yes.
Like, are you still like, okay, so you're still hanging out with Dionysus and Aphrodite?
Well, you're not hanging out with them. Actually, funnily enough, in the first one, I don't think you actually ever get to see any of the surface gods. There is a point at which you can get close to some of them in this. Because so part of this is that this is like a very mild spoiler, is that there's the underworld route where you're basically doing the reverse run that you did in the first game, because you're running backwards through things to get to get to your house, right?
Yeah.
Although it's through different areas, because like basically Kronos has control over all of the main things. So you have to like go through the back way to get to get to him. But then at a certain point, you unlock the upstairs route, which is you go onto the surface and you're fighting your way up to Olympus, because there's also a threat on Olympus. It's actually kind of neat because like initially you've got the same curse as everybody, like Zagreus and everybody else in Hades, which means like you could spend like, you know, maybe like not 30 seconds, but you could spend like a little time on the surface before you start getting hurt and you eventually bleed out. And there's like some stuff you have to do to get past that, but it's, you know, it's an entire second run, right? Which is, and it's significantly more difficult than the downstairs run. But you know, it's twice the content in that way. It's super, I think it's super well done, right? Like the powers are interesting. There's a couple more gods to choose from. There's a whole set of other, like, there's like mechanics that only happen on one side or and on the other. Like Athena is a god that shows up but only upstairs, and like you can get chaos gates on the surface, but they're much more common in the underworld. And there's obviously relationships to advance. They do some fun, like there's one of the like there are rooms. Have you played Hades 1?
I played a lot of it on the plane to Australia, so I have been playing it recently. It's on my, like list, and I'm getting into it and all that kind of stuff, but I have not beaten it. I haven't really gotten, I've maybe done like 6 or 7 runs or something like that, over the course of a couple of hours. I unlocked all of the weapons, because it's fists, spear, shield, sword, bow.
That sounds right.
I have all of those. I unlocked all of the weapons, and I was kind of like, what happens from here? What do I have to care about? And I guess I unlocked a couple of other like meta progression-y sort of things, but I don't know. Unlocking all of the weapons was the thing I cared about, and once I did that, I was off it.
Okay. Did you beat Hades at all? Like, did you?
No, I didn't even touch. I beat the Fury a couple of times.
Okay.
I guess that was that. Yeah.
Is the Fury the only boss you've gotten past?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think I even touched. Who's the boss after the Fury?
I think, or it's Health. This is the second one, right? Like it's like the fiery pits, right? Like it's like the
yeah.
There's a snake at the end of that you have to beat.
Okay, yeah, I don't even think I touched that.
Yeah, and then it's Do you care about spoilers? It's the Minotaur, and it's a double boss fight. It's the Minotaur, and I forget who the human is. And then the final boss of the fourth area is Hades.
Wait, what is it? Perseus? Perseus is the one who does the.
I think so.
Labyrinth.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, that would make sense.
Okay.
But you know how you sometimes get rooms in the areas that are like that are just like people, and you talk to them, and they give you a little bit of a buff, and you walk on. In the second area in Hades 2, it's Narcissus, and he's definitely the person who's voicing him is definitely doing a Nicolas Cage impression. It's great. He's just like looking at, he's like,
that's awesome.
Wow. He's like looking into a reflective puddle. He's like, "You're so beautiful," like, "Oh God." And then you go to talk to him. It's like, you talk to him, and it's like, "Just so you know, I'm not interested in you." But I think it's super fun. It's a little bit more developed. There's more stuff to deal with. I thought the ending was neat. I understand why people were aggravated about it, and from what I've read about how they adjusted them, like that probably fixes most people's issues with it.
Like in the sense of the myth is wrong.
No, it's kind of like the way the story ends. The way people have put it is like the story ends, and it's like you hit the end of a trilogy and you missed the second movie. Like there's just not enough connective tissue to justify everything. I don't think it's quite that bad. There are a couple, like the one tweak I've heard about I think fills out most of it. Basically, it's hard to justify the characters reacting the way they do based on the actions that happen. And I don't want to say anything else because, it's obviously the way the story is.
It's a new game. Yeah. Spoilers. I totally get that. Yep. That makes sense to me. I don't know. I could so part of me that wants to get into into these games, but I also just feel like I have so many games. Fucking Europa Universalis in 2 days. Come on. I have other priorities, okay? The new Total War DLC is coming out. Fucking I'm too into these strategy games. So,
yeah, and also like there is an aspect of like, there's a twitchy skill element to it that if you don't care enough about it, it's I don't think worth if you're not enjoying the core loop.
that kind of thing I typically am bad at and not super interested, in. So.
Yeah, if you're not interested in the mastery, you're not having fun with the core loop. I don't think the story's that good. Like I would not play Hades just to do the little relationship building things, which I think are cool and good and make the elevate the game over other roguelites. But
honestly, the wild thing is I didn't even realize that Zagreus' mother was Persephone. I thought it was fucking Nyx, because she calls him my child the whole time. And when you meet, because you're in the place and you're talking to Hades and you're talking to Nyx, and she's like giving him shit and she keeps calling you my child. So I thought that was his mom, you know? Like,
well,
I just didn't do enough runs to...
This is actually similarity across both games. Both Zagreus and Millennium have mother figures that aren't their mother because they've been separated from them for their whole lives, right? Like in Hades 2, it's Hecate, just because she's the one that like spirits Millennium away right before Cronus.
Goddess of wishes. That's cool.
Yeah. Basically, like I am not as well versed on the Greek lore, but like the whole like, you know, night sisters, night gods are like, you know, kind of like a separate faction from the Olympian gods, like Selene and what is it? Who else? Like not Athena, Artemis.
Is it Nyx? Nyx is the goddess of night.
Yeah,
right?
so Nyx
is in the first one.
Nyx is frozen by Kronos in the second game.
So she is an Olympian god, is the idea?
No.
Or does he do both the night gods and the Olympian gods?
So he doesn't actually get to the Olympian gods. He freezes everybody in the House of Hades, which is mostly the night gods, right? Like
I see. So he doesn't freeze like Ares and Aphrodite.
No,
and
they're
Poseidon.
all on Olympus, which is the upstairs route. Right. Trying to deal with the threat that's up there. Again, the ultimate threat that's up there.
Is the threat the Titans? I love the Titans.
Well,
I think
Kronos is a Titan, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The threat on the mountain is...
Is it a spoiler? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a spoiler. So
you don't have a spoiler. Okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
I love the Titans are like the greatest Greek myth thing that I just think is so neat, right? Like I'm pretty horny anytime a story gives me like ancient chained beings from eons past. You know, like what a great come on, who doesn't want to like
so without giving away too much, Prometheus is involved. Is Demeter a Titan? Okay.
I don't think so. Isn't she Athena's daughter, Demeter, the goddess of spring?
No, who am I thinking of? It's Persephone's mom, the winter goddess. I think that's Demeter.
You might be right. I might be wrong. I don't know that I remember. In Greek tradition, Demeter is the second child of Rhea and Cronus and sister to Hestia, Hades, Poseidon, and Zeus. The goddess of the harvest and agriculture and fertility.
Who's the one that like gets when Hades' wife gets promised to her? This guy gets real sad and like freezes the world. Like that's how winter happens.
Right? Oh, I do think it is Demeter. So Persephone is the daughter of Zeus and Demeter. Wait, Zeus? I thought it was fucking Hades.
No. Persephone is Hades' wife.
Oh, right. Yes. You're right. Okay.
Okay. I have not thought about the incest here. Because, like, so part of this is that Demeter is Zagreus and Millennium's grandmother, right? In the story of both games. Which I don't know why I just realized it's like, oh, she doesn't have to have been married to Kronos. It's not necessarily that grandmother, right? Because Kronos is obviously Millennium and Zagreus' grandfather as well. Yeah,
so Demeter was not likely to allow her daughter to go to Hades.
Yeah.
So Persephone had her own...
Persephone gets promised to Hades and like they work out a deal where for 6 months she can be on the surface, and like when she's gone, Demeter is real sad and that's when winter happens, right? Like that's like that myth. And obviously they streamlined this a little bit in the game, so it's like, you know, it's not quite so much of a problem.
Man, I am really not up on my Greek lore.
Yeah, that's
very,
fine.
very.
I think it's also one of these things where like they're not always necessarily like nothing's always necessarily consistent, right? Like, you know, we think of it as like a kind of solid canon, but it's really not, as far as I understand. Like different stories have different aspects, right? Like I think Dionysus and Pan like may or may not like morph into and out of each other at certain different points, and whether or not like at certain points in Greek history they may have been the same god type of deal. Just because like, you know, Greece went on for a while, and it wasn't always written down, and their understanding versus our understanding of their understanding, right? This is the kind of thing where, like, in 1,000 years, will people think that, like, like that McDonald's were temples or something like that, right? Like, do we worship the Ronald McDonald as our god type of deal?
I worship the Hamburglar. Okay.
But yeah, you asked me about Arc Raiders, which is the game that I am currently on my. So the other games I've been playing is Arc Raiders and Outer Worlds 2. I will talk briefly about Outer Worlds 2, and that I think it's neat, but I don't know if I'm going to stick to it because it is kind of janky, and there is this thing where it feels, I don't know how to, like, it feels that different areas are kind of, it feels kind of like 75% of Skyrim in terms of, like, form, but, like, in a way that, like, I don't feel that the world is actually as connected as I felt that Skyrim was. And I don't know if that's, like, it's 15 years later and Skyrim just captured me at an age when I didn't see, like, things connected in a way that, like, I think that, say, like, Tears of the Kingdom has done really well, even though it's not the same type of game, and that Outer Wilds is just, like, not hitting that for me. So I'm not sure if I'm sticking with it. But Arc Raiders is a lot of fun. Arc Raiders is an extraction shooter. It is an approachable extraction shooter in the sense that it is not as hardcore as Tarkov. It's available on Steam. It's really hit, like, there's a ton of play. Like, we had trouble playing on Saturday because, like, basically, me and friend of the cast, Monik, were sitting in, like, just chatting while we were waiting to get out of the queue to get into the game. But, we sat there for, like, an hour. Yeah, like, before we could, like, truly get in and hit it. It's, it is, so extraction shooters, the way it works is you go, you loot stuff, and you get out. But there are other players, and there are PvE enemies and PvP enemies. The PvP enemies, in, like, larger, like, if you're in squads, they tend to be more aggressive, and if you're solo, I have heard that people tend to be a little bit more friendly, a little bit more forgiving, because there's proximity chat that you can use to talk to them. And they try and match squads with squads and solos with solos. It's not always successful. But it's, it's very tense, and the loop is good enough that they have you, like, there are quests and there are things to do that is always kind of pushing you to do something. You can always kind of advance a little bit, even if you lose. And part of the thing here is that, like, if you die, you lose basically everything on your body, right? So, like, there's constant, like, kind of sinusoidal gameplay wave. And it's super tense. It's super fun. There's always a little bit of stuff to do. That's always kind of balancing, like, how much do you want to fight and how much do you want to get out? Do you want to challenge people and try and take their stuff? Do you want to try and team, like, call out, be like, hey, no fights, just, like, chill, right? And there's a bunch of little stuff that happens with that. So it's got that kind of loop going that works out well, that I enjoy, and also, there's always kind of, like, everything's fun with friends type deal, but it's like it's always good when you've got, like, a squad that you can roll with and kind of take on challenges together, especially if you can coordinate.
Yeah, I feel like that I wonder if I would get really into extraction shooters, just because I kind of felt like the thing that was missing from BRs for me was sort of a point, which was to say that, like, you do it a bunch, it's very addictive. I put, like, 40 hours over the course of a couple of weeks, right, with everybody when we were playing, like, PUBG and stuff like that. But you get to a point where it's just like, why bother?
Yeah,
right. Like, why am I?
You're just trying to win for the winning's sake, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Which is part of how I feel about stuff like League of Legends feels this way to me sometimes. Actually, Battlegrounds is a great example of this. I've been playing a lot of Hearthstone Battlegrounds, right? It's an auto chess, right? It's strategic, which I like. There's a little bit of APM sometimes if you, like, opt into the right kind of comp. But But a lot of the times with Battlegrounds, I am setting there's ELO, MMR. I'm setting like a ratings goal, right? For a long time, it was 7K. So I'm now 7K in Battlegrounds, and that feels great. And I don't want to do it. And a lot of the times I'm looking for like a good, clean, solid win that feels fun. And then I want to move on. I want to and so like earlier today, I finished work and Rachel wasn't home yet, and I was like, I'm gonna play Battlegrounds until Rachel gets back. And I played one game of Battlegrounds where I sniped a fucking baller second place because I really outplayed the lobby in a number of ways. I like fought for second place basically. There was one guy who was tearing ahead, and then everybody was competing for a build that I knew. I was like, there's a limited number of, this is complicated. There's a limited number of minions in the lobbies, right? So if multiple people are all going for the same build, it's kind of like in draft in Magic. If too many people are in a color, it really hoses you, right? If there's only one person at the table in green, they're going to get all the best green stuff. And if there's 4 people in blue, they're splitting all of the best blue stuff 4 ways, same sort of thing. And so I was like, I am going to play to the meta breaker where I'm just going to shit can these guys because they're all competing for a really crazy build, but they're not going to be able to put it together. And I just dumpstered like 4 or 5 people where I just killed them because they couldn't beat my build and I had read the lobby so good. And I got to the end of it and I was like, I don't want to play another. This felt amazing. I'm so happy. I'm not going to queue up again. And I literally just got up from my computer and walked away rather than re-queue. And so the idea of an extraction shooter where you take all this BR stuff, but then you include a loop on it that's like loot, right? You are gaining stuff that you are taking from match to match to match. And you can do that thing where you build the perfect gun. I'm assuming, I don't know that this works that way. You build the perfect gun that you want, and now it's like, oh, great, I can start every game with that gun. But maybe I lose it because I die. It's like, that I think is amazing. And
yeah,
I could see myself get into it.
There's getting to that higher level like takes a while, and like the guns don't have that many slots. Then that's one of the things that makes this game more approachable, is that it's not quite as complex as Tarkov. But like you said, I really like playing with this gun called the Anvil. The Anvil is like a hand cannon, right? But I cannot make them yet. I don't have the ability to make them. I have to find them occasionally. And like I got one yesterday, loaded into a match, almost immediately died, lost it. I was like, okay, oh well. End of the session that we that I ended right before we hopped on the cast. I found another one, so I've got one in my ready to go. And people watching the stream will have heard this. But I Steam chat message for the cast mod was like, "You want to play?" I'm like, still in the cast, man. So you know what?
Let's just go play. I'm convinced. Oh fuck, I haven't downloaded it.
You also have to go through like a small intro tutorial, but maybe this will be the topic for next week. We'll play a bunch over the course of the weekend and talk about it next week. It's see if it sticks for
maybe.
you. Yeah.
All right. Fuck. How do I redeem this fucking gift? I'm so sorry.
I sent it to you directly in Steam, so it should be doable. But let's wrap it there. We're at an hour 30. Coming to you from our old normal time, just because that's the way things worked out this week.
That's the way things worked out.
But yeah, so, if you'd like to email us about any things we talked about in this podcast, you can reach us at somedirtsplaygames@gmail.com or podcast@somedirtsplaygames.com. You can follow us twitch.tv/somedirtsplaygames or youtube.com/somedirtsplaygames, where these go out live. Rate reviews wherever you find podcasts. All the links will be down in the description. Buddy, do you have anything else you're looking to promote?
I do have one thing I'm looking to promote this week, which is that Gigasword, which I have talked about intermittently on the podcast a couple of times. It's a Metroidvania that we're putting out, where your sword is giga. It is too big, and it's cool and fun. Gigasword is coming out next week, so I just want to put it in people's brains that if you're looking for the next great Akupara title, next week.
Yeah, keep our eyes on Gigasword. Well, with that, I'm going to say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.